The loaner had no face of its own. It had been borrowing them one piece at a time. Late in the shop, sorting salvage into lined trays, I hear my own voice behind me say one word: almost. On the shelf behind me sits a bare wooden figure that hasn't had eyes in 19 years. I check the trays are lidded. I check the deadbolt twice. I do not turn around. My name is Margo Voss. I restore antique dolls for a living. Bisque heads, composition bodies, the occasional early hard plastic piece from the 50s. Cracked glaze, missing fingers, moth-eaten wigs. The little tin mechanisms that used to make a doll cry or say mama and mostly don't anymore. People bring me their grandmother's dolls, their mother's dolls, sometimes a dead child's doll. I make them presentable enough to sit on a shelf again, without falling apart the next time somebody dusts them. I learned the trade from a man named Corwin. He ran the shop for 41 years before he handed it to me and moved out to his daughter's place upstate. He taught me the ordinary parts of restoration: how to match a glaze, how to reset a sleep-high mechanism, how to bind a wig without scorching the scalp underneath. He also taught me the part nobody outside the trade knows about, because there's no polite way to advertise it. You do not throw away a doll that's too far gone to save. You strip it. Every restoration shop that's been in business long enough keeps something like it. A fitting figure. A jointed wooden body, roughly doll-sized, kept bare of any face on purpose, so it never competes with whatever real doll you're working on. You use it to test a wig before committing glue. You use it to hold a loose eye at the right angle while you check the socket fit. And when a doll comes in too broken to save, shattered head, rotted body, nothing left worth restoring, you don't throw the good parts out with the bad. You take what's salvageable and you pin it temporarily onto the fitting figure. A drawer of spare hands, a jar of loose eyes sorted by color and size, wig lots tagged and boxed. It's just inventory. Every shop has one. Corwin's shop had one for over 4 decades, and everyone who'd ever worked here just called it the loaner. Corwin had exactly one rule about it, and he gave it to me on my 2nd week, standing right where I'm standing now.
Never let it keep more than it gives back.
I asked him what that meant. He said I'd know it when I saw it, and changed the subject. In 11 years of working beside him, he never brought it up again. I filed it under the kind of shop superstition every trade collects. Don't whistle backstage. Don't say the last line of the play before opening night. I didn't think about it again until March. In March, a woman named Delphine brought in a porcelain head doll that had belonged to her mother. It had come through a house fire 2 decades back, boxed up and forgotten in a garage since, and it showed. One hand gone at the wrist, half the mohair wig burned to stubble. The left eye socket empty, the little lead counterweight that should have swung it shut gone entirely.
She used to call her Junebug. I know that's silly for a grown woman to still care about.
It's not silly. Give me 3 weeks. I went to the loaner for the eye. Pale blue, aged glass, the kind you can't buy new anymore. The loaner had a whole jar of them, sorted decades ago by someone's careful hand. I picked the closest match to what was left of the original and set it on the bench with my tweezers to align it before fitting it into the empty socket. It was already aligned. Dead center, iris facing exactly where an iris should face on a doll looking straight ahead before I'd touched it at all. I told myself I'd nudged the tray. I fitted it in. It sat flush on the first try, which almost never happens. The shop radio sits on the bench between stations, tuned to wherever the static is quietest. I don't always turn it off when I lock up. Twice that week, I came in the next morning to find it retuned to dead air. Once, standing in the doorway with my key still in the lock, I heard it say 2 words in a voice that wasn't a radio voice at all.
Give her 3 weeks.
It was Delphine's sentence. My sentence, really, I'd said it, not her, played back half a beat off, in a register that wasn't quite mine and wasn't quite anyone's. I pulled the plug out of the wall. I told myself a neighboring station had bled through the tuner, the way they sometimes do after a storm. There had been no storm. Corwin kept a ledger for the loaner. Not the shop's ordinary bookkeeping, a separate book, cloth-bound, that lived in the back storage closet under a shelf of paint thinner nobody had reason to move. I found it that week, looking for something else. I sat down on the concrete floor and read most of 4 decades of his handwriting by flashlight. Every part that ever went onto the loaner was logged. Where it came from, what doll it had been stripped from, what lot or estate or auction it had arrived in. It was meticulous in a way that had nothing to do with running a business. Nobody itemizes a spare glass eye for tax purposes. The longer I sat with it, the less it read like inventory. It read like a record somebody was keeping on purpose, in case anyone ever needed to ask where every single piece had come from. 3 entries stopped me. One, from decades back, logged a lot of assorted doll restoration remnants bought from a supplier named Purcell, the kind of trade name that gets passed shop to shop for a lifetime without anyone asking who he originally bought from. Another logged parts pulled from a portrait photographer's estate after his restoration business closed without explanation, tools and stock sold off in one lot. The third was smaller, a donation box dropped off anonymously by a family clearing a seamstress relative's estate. No name given, just sweetheart doll remnants, wartime era. None of those 3 entries meant anything to me on their own. I want to be honest about that. I didn't connect any of it to anything at the time. I just remember thinking, closing the ledger, that a very great many broken dolls had passed through this one wooden figure over a very long time, and that every one of them had been logged like it mattered where they'd been before they got here. Not every entry had that much care in it, though. A handful, scattered through the earliest pages, had no supplier and no date at all, just a part, and a single word in the margin. Kept. I noticed them mostly because they were the only gaps in an otherwise complete record, and I didn't think about them again until much later. I finished Delphine's doll on schedule. New hand, new wig, the pale blue eye sitting exactly where it should. Delphine cried a little in the doorway, the ordinary, quiet way people cry over a thing that was never really about the thing.
Hello again, Junebug. Same name, same girl, I've got you now.
She said it right into the porcelain face. Close, the private way you talk to something you've missed. I remember thinking it was a nice moment to watch. I wasn't thinking about the eye that had come to me already perfectly aligned. I wasn't thinking about a jar of matching parts sitting 40 feet behind me in a storage closet, waiting for whichever name got spoken next. Business was good that spring. 6 more restorations came through in 5 weeks, and the loaner's jars and drawers made this trade what it's always been: efficient. A wig lot here, a pair of hands there, an eye, another eye. A little tin voice box bellows that hadn't worked in a hand-cranked doll for 60 years and worked perfectly the moment I fitted it into a new chest cavity. It didn't occur to me at the time. I was doing the ordinary math of a small trade with a limited supply of period-correct parts. I didn't see that I was doing something closer to distribution than restoration. 6 households, 6 shelves, 6 dolls, and every one of them quietly wearing some fragment of the same donor figure standing bare and patient on a shelf in my storage closet. I didn't count it that way at the time. I count it that way now. I noticed the loaner's shoulder in May. There's a socket there where an arm comes off for storage, and it had always been an obvious gap, bare mortise, visible joint pin, the plain construction of a working tool nobody ever meant to look finished. That week it didn't look like a gap anymore. The wood grain around the empty socket had drawn in, fine lines closing over the opening the way a scar closes over a wound. It read less like an unfinished fitting figure, and more like a shoulder that simply didn't have an arm. I went back to Corwin's ledger that night, looking for anything he might have written about it directly. Near the last third of the book, his handwriting changes, gets smaller, starts and stops mid-sentence more than once.
The more of it goes out named, the less of it stays here waiting.
The entry ends there. No date after it. I checked, that's the last entry in the whole ledger in 4 decades of otherwise faithful record keeping. He simply stopped writing in it. The same year, I would later work out that he started slowing down on new restorations and began quietly turning work away. I stayed late the night I finished reading. I told myself I was closing up the storage closet properly. Tags sorted, jars relidded, the ordinary tidiness you do to feel like you're in control of a room. That's when I heard it start. Not one voice. Pieces of 6 months of names, layered thin over each other, half a beat off from however they'd first been spoken. Delphine's Junebug. A client's hello again. A child's private nickname murmured once at pickup and never repeated in front of me. Every name anyone had given anything I'd restored this spring, replaying at once, faint, from every shelf in the room at the same time. Then it stopped being an echo of anything.
I am almost finished.
Not mine, not borrowed from anyone I'd ever heard say it. No half-beat lag, no wrongness in the timing this time. Just a small, level, unhurried voice, using a word it had never once used honestly in 6 months of mimicking mine and everyone else's back at us. Almost finished with what? Nothing answered that. It didn't need to. I didn't burn it. I want to be clear that I thought about it, standing there. Then I remembered enough of Corwin's other habits, the way he never let anyone in the shop so much as scorch a doll part on purpose, not even the ruined ones, to stop myself. Whatever a thing like that is holding, breaking it open doesn't empty it out. It puts everything it was keeping into whoever's standing nearest when it breaks. So I sealed it instead. What was left of the loaner, every remaining jar and drawer and tag, went into a lined crate. The crate went into the back of the storage closet, behind the same shelf of paint thinner that had hidden Corwin's ledger from me for 11 years. I have not opened it since. I can't undo the 6 restorations already sitting on 6 different shelves around this town, each one holding a small piece of the same figure, each one already answering to a name somebody gave it out of love. I think about that more than I'd like to. Every part I use in this shop now comes from a supplier catalog. Freshly made, nothing salvaged, nothing with a story attached to it that I don't already know in full. It costs more. I don't mind. I caught myself once, taping the crate's lid down for the 2nd time, about to give the whole sealed mess a name. The same habit that lets me talk to an empty room while I work. Something short, almost fond. I stopped myself with the word half out, the way you stop yourself walking toward a curb you've already seen the car coming toward. I don't know what I almost called it. I've made myself not wonder. I still do this work. I like this work. Most nights closing up is exactly what it always was: sweep the floor, cap the glue, kill the lamps one station at a time. Some nights, though, I stand in the hallway a beat longer than I need to, looking down toward that storage closet door, and I get the same feeling I got the night I sealed the crate. Not threat, exactly. Patience. Something on the other side of a latch, most of the way built, waiting only to hear what the rest of it might still be called.
Almost.
I don't answer that one either. If you've ever handed something old and broken to a stranger to fix and gotten it back looking a little too perfect for what you paid, stay close. I'd like to know what you find next time you look closely at what's holding it together.